podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Final score from Anfield is Liverpool 1, Chelsea 1, and hallelujah, we didn't get beat. That's really the level we're at currently, which says a lot about our season and the way it's gone. But I think I'm going to try and come on today and just use this game in isolation and not really mention the last 3 months or so, because everybody knows what's happened to us. So there we go. It was a tough start for Chelsea. I thought that Liverpool were very dominant in the first maybe 20, 25 minutes and created quite a few chances. Obviously, Gravenberch coming up with a great strike to beat Jorgensen there. I thought Chelsea as a whole defensively were, I think as a whole, that's a lie. I thought that Levi Colwill and Jiro Hato had excellent games at the back. I'll come on to Colwill a bit in a minute. But I thought Gusto was pretty average and pretty poor once again. Kicking the ball out of play randomly, not tracking runners, getting beat, ends up by Rio and Gamoa, the guy that we let go to Liverpool for, basically a free transfer. I think we've had some conversations since, but not a lot. But he didn't really know what to do against him, and he was getting himself in a right state. And quite frankly, the quicker Malo Gusto leaves this football club, the better, as far as I'm concerned. He's not a favourite of mine at all. And it has to be said, every time the ball went down that left-hand side for Liverpool, we looked in trouble, and it seemed to be the main area that they were targeting, which is understandable. Chelsea was sort of in a hybrid. It was a weird formation. On paper, it looked like a back three, and for periods of the game, it was a back three, but equally, it was quite evident to see that players were pushing on and actually creating a back four. I liked the formation. I liked the fact that Callum McFarlane had used, some kind of resemblance of his brain and tried to come up with a plan to disrupt Liverpool. And having Marc Cucurella as high as he was a fantastic move. And he has been given man of the match, Cucurella, today, and deservedly so, in my opinion. In the first half, he was quite wonderful. And once Chelsea got a foothold back in the game, which is probably around the 30th minute mark, it took us a long time to get going. And I'm sure, like all Chelsea fans, I was thinking, my God, this could be a really long day if we don't get a hold of the ball soon. And it was around that 30th minute mark when we started creating a few chances, and it was basically all down to Cucurella. Some fantastic little passes from Caicedo and Enzo. They were being dropped into him, which is, fair play to them. But Mark was making the runs and getting himself in good positions. He had an excellent shot that was saved. He got in another position where the ball just came down. He made a good touch, and it just ran away from him at the last minute. He was causing problems in terms of making sure he was getting blocks in and creating. He actually came up with a couple of corners because he was defending so high and giving Konate and Curtis Jones an absolute sort of runaround. Really, he was quite fantastic in that first period. And it was nice to see Chelsea have a 15, 20-minute spell where they were on top of a game, and in a big game too. I know it's, for both sides, it's a bit of a dead rubber, to be honest with you. Liverpool are probably going to make the Champions League, and Chelsea are probably not going to make anything this season. But to see us go to Anfield and play a big side, even though they're not playing well at the moment, it made us look pretty good. And as a fan, you can be quite happy with that. I know we can't dismiss the last 3 months or more, but as an isolated game, we were definitely the team on top. And when we went into half-time, having scored that free kick from Enzo, which kind of managed to find its way all the way through and hit the far post and went in. I mean, I'm not quite sure how that did go in, but I think Wes Fofana's, and he wasn't trying to claim it. I think he was saying it was Enzo Fernandez's goal, and no one's sure to this moment, really, whose goal it was. I'm pretty convinced it is Enzo's goal. Initially, I thought that Wes did get a touch on it. It looked like he maybe studded it into the far corner, but if you look from the shot above the pitch, I think Wes is about maybe a foot and a half away from it. So I think the camera angles can look quite deceiving. And I think that is Enzo's goal. But we did get that equaliser, deservedly so. And I think from that point, we were the team just dominating and creating all the chances. Liverpool couldn't get out. The crowd were getting restless for them. Slot was getting abuse. Curtis and Konate were arguing. And it was very, very good to see from our point of view. And it was like, oh, okay, this team can play a little bit, which is quite nice to see. Obviously, we didn't really want a half-time, but half-time came and went. And again, it was all Chelsea. I'd say for the first 15 or so minutes, it was all Chelsea again. And that period after half-time, we looked very, very dangerous. Again, putting some good balls in the box, causing Mamardashvili some trouble. Obviously, the Liverpool back four was in a little bit of, again, not strife, but again, that Curtis Jones-Konate area was where we were targeting. And Cucurella was having a lot more joy. João Pedro was getting involved and doing well. And we came up with that second goal, and it was brilliant to see, although it was chalked off shortly afterwards. A lovely finish from Cole Palmer. Again, he didn't I wouldn't say Cole Palmer did loads today. He wasn't terrible. What he did do was all right. But the way that he finished that ball when it came down was beautiful. Lovely finish. And I thought, that just might be what he needs. But it was chalked off and the scoreline remained 1-1. And then really from that point onwards, Liverpool then, I'd say, gained a foothold in the game. And it was basically them on the attack. And I'd say from about minute 58, 60, they came back into it for probably the next 20, 25 minutes and pushed us back. And they scored a goal themselves. It was given offside. Van Dijk hit the bar. And we weren't hanging on by any means, but we were certainly giving up a few chances ourselves. And the game could have gone the other way. I thought that I was going to be coming here telling you that Chelsea had won a game against Liverpool because we looked like the team that were going to go and do it at one point. But okay, Liverpool did gain that momentum back, and they should have really probably scored a goal or two themselves. But João Pedro was a menace all afternoon when he had his opportunities, and he had a great chance to make it 2-1 to Chelsea just after their second goal was disallowed for offside. And he just blazed it over the bar. But I thought João Pedro's hold-up play was fantastic. The way he entices people in, he gets his fouls, he manages to wriggle out of spaces really, really well. And yeah, João Pedro, I mean, like Chris said last week, he's the player of the season by default. But I think, to be fair to João Pedro, he's had a good season regardless. And not just for scoring 20 goals. He has generally been a very good player. He's been a real plus point for Chelsea and someone that I've really enjoyed watching. And I am really pleased with him, actually, because he actually comes across as a very good guy. And I thought at Brighton, when we bought him, I thought he always had a bit of an edge. And yes, he does play with an edge, but I think he's not someone that you immediately dislike as an opposition team. I think he's someone that, if anybody signed him now, they'd be really happy to have him. But yeah, it was a really good game. I thought it was back and forth. Both sides went for it. Chelsea, again, a bit mixed. Obviously, Rob Sanchez injured before the game, but injured in the week. So Jorgensen played. Like I say, Callum McFarlane playing a different formation. And obviously the signs of Levi Colwill coming back into the side was just fantastic. And his organisation, I was just watching him and only him for periods of the game, and I wasn't interested in the game. I wanted to know what he was all about again. And the way he was organising and orchestrating the defence, telling Hato where to be all the time. What do young players want? They want someone who's been there, played and got the T-shirt. And Levi Colwill is a young man, but he's played a lot of Premier League games for Brighton and Chelsea. And you can just see he's a captain. He's a leader. He's the person on the field that I think that everybody's going to look up to and everybody's going to want to be around, because I've forgotten how big he is. I've forgotten what a mountain he is, what a player he is. Good on the ball, defensively strong, breaks up play, makes interceptions. Just a great player, really good guy. And I'd forgotten what a good defender really looks like. And if anybody is unsure, then just go and watch that game back or the highlights back, and you'll see everything you need to know about Levi Colwill. And he's actually given me a little bit of hope for this season. And maybe that's the title of the podcast, Hope. Because if he can come back and play as well as he did today after having all that time off, 45 minutes against Nottingham Forest, 90 minutes today, he probably plays in the cup final next week, which is a huge bonus for Chelsea. Whether we win it or not, I think he's going to be the reason why we might win it, which is fantastic to see. And I don't know about anybody else, but Hato and Fofana seemed much more comfortable having him in the side. He, to me, felt like the glue today. And I, as a Chelsea fan, would have probably given man of the match to Levi purely because of the reasons I just said. Been out for an entire season with a bad injury, comes back after all that time and plays that well against Liverpool at Anfield was exceptional. And I'll let you into a little window of what I did this morning. So I had to work very early today, and I thought, do you know what? I'm going to go back and listen to a couple of our podcasts we did at the very start of the season. And I listened to the West Ham one where we won 5-1 and a couple of other things. And in that, the transfer window is still open. And there was a lot of talk of Enzo Maresca begging the sporting directors to go and sign him as centre-back because he knew how big of a miss Levi Colwill was. And you just say to yourself now, had they listened and gone and got Mark Gay when you probably could have got him for about 40, 50 million from Crystal Palace, and that's before Mark Gay knew all the situations that Chelsea would find themselves in now, in the disappointing league position and where they finished. But you would have just sensed that this team would have been much higher and much better and much stronger for it. And can you imagine Mark Gay and Levi Colwill playing together next season? That would have been absolutely frightening. And I know Mark Gay made a mistake last week for the Everton goal, but his performances for Man City so far have been out of this world. I've seen a lot of Man City games since he's played, and I think he's been one of their best players almost every week. And it actually sent a shiver up my spine. I was like, oh, Gay and Colwill together back. Well, that would have been something else. But I think Enzo Maresca, for all his faults, and he did have some faults, there were things that he probably mentioned and he didn't get, and the sporting directors went and then signed Garnacho on the back of it. You could probably understand that would have really annoyed him and irked him, because he could see that his squad probably was thin on the ground, and he knew that Tosin wasn't the guy. He knew that Badiashile wasn't going to do it for him. Maybe thought Fofana might have done okay with a partner, someone good like Mark Gay. I could see Mark Gay and Fofana being a good partnership if he stayed fit, like Levi Colwill and Fofana was when they had that long spell last season before the Fofana injury. So, yeah, it's disappointing that the sporting directors didn't listen to Maresca, because I think that this season may have panned out a lot differently if we'd had that one player. And it's not to say that we would have won the league. I'm not suggesting that. But I think genuinely, and I mean this with passion, I think that a solid back four that Chelsea didn't have to change, because Maresca and Rosinia didn't know who to pick. Tosin, Badiashile, Fofana, Hato, like there was no standout player that you could have just gone, right, okay, you're in and you're going to stay in. None of them were playing well enough for that to be a thing. Trev, again, bit in and out, forms up and down. I just felt as though they'd have needed a really strong head, and Mark Gay would have been that player. It's a real shame we didn't even consider it, it seemed. We just went and signed Garnacho because we like collecting wingers. Yeah, I was a bit saddened when I came off the after the game, because I thought, you know what, had we had him or had another defender like Levi Colwill this season, and Levi coming back next year, it would have been a different story for us this year. But there we go. Can't be helped. We go again, and hopefully Levi can stay fit. And if he does stay fit and plays well, there's even a good chance he may even make the World Cup squad, because I don't think there's a better England centre-half out there, quite frankly. And I don't want to sit here and say he's world-class, because he's had one really good season for Chelsea, then he got injured, and now he's come back and he looks fantastic again. But I think let's give him some time to breathe, let him come back properly before we start putting those titles on his name. But I think Levi Colwill could go to the very top, and hopefully Chelsea treat him that way with a good contract, a good extension, hopefully soon. And he's someone that we would like to keep for 10 years, please. Not someone like Garnacho, but there we go. All in all, I thought Chelsea's performance today was decent. I wouldn't say it was like the best game I've ever seen. It was a good game to watch for a neutral. Chelsea's performances of late have been, as you know, absolutely woeful and pretty disgusting, quite frankly. And the way that they came and fought at least today and showed some pride. I thought Caicedo was much better. I should mention him. I thought Enzo had a much better game. Andres Santos, again, in the midfield was very, very good. I think on another day we might be sitting here saying that Jorgen's going to cost us a couple of goals, because he did try and play out from the back a couple of times and did some dribbles and nearly lost the ball. And again, it could have been one of those stories we're sitting here going, same old story, same old Chelsea, but he got away with it today. And we go back to London with a hard-earned point. But what he does for our season, absolutely nothing, quite frankly. We can still drop positions today when other teams win. But you know what? I think we're probably going to end up finishing bottom half of the table. I really do. And that's going to be a disgusting indictment on what has been a fairly miserable season. And I don't know if I've actually enjoyed a season less than this one, bearing in mind the expectations of the progress we were expected to make this season. But like we said before, I think these sporting directors need a good look at themselves. I think if Chelsea can go and get themselves a really good, competent, experienced sporting director with a really good, competent manager, and maybe buying some decent experience that's won some things and has some actual value to this side next season, then we may have half a chance of getting back to somewhere like the top four. But at this stage of the season, the way we're playing and the way it's been going, the players really do need to hang their heads in shame, quite frankly. But as a one-off game today, fair play to them. They picked themselves up. They did a decent job, and we roll into the cup final next weekend, where Chris and I will do probably a match preview on that after Chris's voice note, which is going to come up very, very shortly. So, Chris, it's over to you, mate.
I have a bit of a weird feeling after that game, I think. Obviously, part of you is just kind of relieved to have stopped the rot in terms of losing games. I mean, it had to end. I didn't think it would end, let's face it, at Anfield. And that's a real positive. I think that the reason I probably have mixed feeling is, where has that performance been? Liverpool aren't great. We know that their fans made that very clear. They're not particularly happy, but Chelsea showed that they can play, and I don't know. It's sort of, I was watching it thinking, you look at some of those players out there and think there's some real quality there, isn't there? Real quality. And Joe and I were chatting on the Friday before the game about obviously the season and where we are. And the thing that came to mind, and I said this to Joe, was I think we've all felt, and probably a lot of Chelsea fans have felt, that a lot of this Chelsea squad are quite unlikable, and they've let us down. Really, I think genuinely have let us down. That's kind of what came to mind. And I was going through some of the players and thinking, at the start of this season, Joe and I met for a beer in London, and we're going through the squad, and we're genuinely saying that there was a lot of players we actually really liked. And actually, Colwill's one of them. So, I mean, I can't beat really what Joe said, and there's no person in the world that I respect his opinion on about centre-backs more than Joe. So he's absolutely nailed his summary there of Colwill, but Colwill's certainly one of them. But you go through and go, Cucurella, Reece James, I mean, that's three of the back four that you go, yeah, I really like them. Casado and Enzo in midfield, really like them. Cole Palmer, obviously. Pedro Neto, I personally really like. I think Joe did as well. João Pedro, obviously we hadn't seen much of him earlier in the season, but from early signs were really positive. Esteval, very similar. And you're kind of going through, well, that's 8 or 9 of an 11 that you're going like, not only do you really rate them as footballers, but think, yeah, no, I think there's a bit about them in these guys. You could build a genuine squad around these and think we've got a real chance. And I think that's why this season is so disappointing, isn't it? Because they have let us down. As fans, they've let themselves down. They've let the club down. And of course, there's so much discourse, and rightly so, about the manager situation and Maresca and Rosinia and obviously above them, the sporting directors and owners. And rightly so. I think they absolutely deserve a lot of flack. But some of these players, their level of performances have just been nowhere near it. And we weren't brilliant the whole game today. And, it could have gone either way, and draw was probably a fair result. But you just sort of see it, little glimpses, and think, yeah, that's a good side. That there are enough building blocks there to have done much better this season. And hopefully we have a good summer. And next year it's almost a clean slate to have a proper go. Because if you can keep the majority of those players together, as I've just said, like the names that I've just listed, probably 8 players, and put the right ingredients around them, I still don't think we're a million miles off. And I guess that's one of the positives of today. I think Xabi Alonso was in the ground watching, and I'm sure the other candidates that are currently being linked to the Chelsea job, the likes of Iriola, Fabregas, etc., everyone will have their favourite, would have been watching the game, or certainly watched the game. And you kind of look at that and think, well, they've kind of shown an incoming manager that there are a lot of ingredients still in this Chelsea squad to build a really good side. And perhaps if we can finish the season in that manner, and hope is a great word, because suddenly now I do feel like there's a little bit of hope going to Wembley next week. I certainly didn't feel like that 24 hours ago, but now you kind of go, well, we'll have a go. And as Joe said, we'll preview the City game later in the week, I think. But you look at it now and think, wow, if we play like that, we'll have a go at them. And who knows? And maybe if we can finish the season, as I said, positively, then the conversation around the manager and other signings in the summer can be a bit more positive. In terms of the game itself, it was really good to see a different approach. I think that's the one thing I'd say from McFarlane. Again, his record obviously hasn't been perfect, but he's managed to get draws at now Anfield and the Etihad, which is pretty impressive in 4 Premier League games in charge. It was great to see us do something a bit different. As soon as I saw the team come out, I was like, yeah, okay, we've been asking for something a bit different. Colwill in the middle of a 3, which it was at times, with Hato left centre-back and Fofana to his right, just made a lot of sense, didn't it? If you go next week, again, don't want to preview the City game yet, but if you can try and get Reece James fit to start that game, again, instead of Gusto, for example, you look at that Chelsea side and think he just looks so much stronger. Colwill, I think, is a big decision for a new manager coming in to look at the captaincy situation and say, with all due respect to to Reece James, of course, to Enzo Fernandez, who doesn't speak English, to Moise Caicedo, who isn't a big talker that we can see, to go, look, I need my captain to be someone like this. And that person quite clearly is Levi Colwill. Joe's nailed it there, but you don't even have to be on the pitch to see it. You can just tell in the way he carries himself, and he's actually very good off the pitch. I don't know if a lot of people have seen Colwill speak off the pitch, but he carries himself with a real gravitas. He's a bit of a throwback actually to a Terry Lampard type, I think, the way he speaks off the pitch. He did. I watched a thing on YouTube recently. It was a day in the life of a Premier League footballer, and it was with Colwill as he was kind of going through his rehabilitation, back on the grass at Cobham and all that kind of stuff. And he's just got a bit about him. He's got a bit of confidence, a bit of swagger. He's very Chelsea. And I love Reece James. We all love Reece James as a player. There's not a Chelsea fan in the world who doesn't love Reece James. But I think we all hear him speak off the pitch and think, he doesn't feel captain-like, does he? He doesn't feel like he's the one who, and I'm sure he's had his moments, but he doesn't feel like consistently in that changing room is the guy that before a big game is really going to galvanise. And he does a lot of his captainship, I think, leading by example on the pitch, which he does brilliantly. But when you look at the likes of Colwill, and I think playing that centre-back position, some of the best captains, arguably the best captains in Premier League history have all been centre-backs, and for good reason. You've got the whole game in front of you, you're centre of everything. We've lacked leadership in that position all season. It will be a big thing, I think, with the summer to watch when a new manager comes in, because that would be a very difficult change to make, obviously, for Reece. But the likes of a Mourinho, a Conte, etc., would just have done it, wouldn't they? You just know they would have done it. They made a lot of big decisions, and that's what a big manager has to do. So yeah, overall, as Joe said, in terms of where we're going to finish in the league, we're going to be nowhere. It's going to be pretty negative. A point today doesn't really help us in that respect. Maybe it gives us a bit of hope that we can do something against Spurs and Sunderland if we play like that. But ultimately, the league isn't great. It's not going to be great. But maybe next week at Wembley, we can pull off the impossible, like we did in Porto, beat Man City in a final and finish the season with just a little bit of positivity that none of us thought was coming our way. We will be back to preview that game later this week. We'll see you next time. Those were the Chelsea notes for this week. If you enjoyed the podcast, do us a favour and share it with a fellow Blue. And we'd love to hear your thoughts, so leave us a review wherever you're listening. Wherever you may be, stay carefree, and remember, every little thing's gonna be alright.